Welcome to this two-part video tutorial on hand drafting a half-drop pattern design for finishing off in Photoshop. This is intended as a follow-up resource for students who attended the in-person workshop. There's a lot to cover here, so to keep this video from getting too long, only essential info has been included. Please see some links in the description for related tutorials and information. The digital part of this session assumes a basic level of Photoshop skills. This method of hand drafting a design is quick and quite magical, but it doesn't give you too much control over your layout. This approach is great for designs that are quite all over or textural, but for something that requires a little more consideration in terms of a composition, a different approach that allows you to plan a layout is much more appropriate. But you can definitely get some nice results with this more freestyle technique. I hope you enjoy the video. Firstly, we need to establish our repeat size. Today we're going to be working with a half drop repeat unit of 20 centimeters by 28 centimeters. And for this drawing technique, we need to cut our 20 by 28 piece of paper into two so that we have two sheets of paper, each measuring 20 centimeters by 14 centimeters. This is quite an arbitrary repeat size, and usually your repeat unit will be determined by the roll of your fabric or a wallpaper size or something like that. The next part of the process is to draft out your design. You want to hold the two pieces of paper together, so butt these edges up, hold them together and start drawing without going too close to these edges to begin with. And then you want to move these around so that they are in that orientation, and then butt these side edges up, and then you can carry on drawing over the join. Okay, and then you can do the same and butt these two edges together and carry on drawing. Okay, and as long as they are facing the same way up, you can just shift them round, adding to your design. Now that I've got a rough draft, I can tape these two together and pop this on a light box and trace over it. Take a sheet of paper that measures the same as my repeat unit, in this case 20 centimeters and by 28 centimeters. Okay, and now I'm on the light box and I'm ready to trace over this. I'm going to give two options for how you might develop this. This is the first, and the second option is slightly different, and that would involve using a bigger piece of paper and drawing complete motifs. This second method is covered in a separate video which you can watch at the end of this one. Now, I'd like these little red crosses to carry on down the sides and over the seams. So to do that, I'm going to cut this bit of artwork in half. So I've got two pieces, again measuring 20 by 14, and then I'm going to carry on drawing those little red crosses with the same method that we used before to generate the repeat in the first place. I can now turn these over, tape them together and scan this in at a resolution of at least 300 dpi. I can also use paper photocopies of this to test out how well my repeat is working. So I take the copies and start to lay them out in half drop formation to check the balance and repeat of this design. when we bring this scan into Photoshop, we're also going to be doing something very similar, but instead of using pieces of paper and laying them out on a table, we're going to be making duplicates of layers and manually pulling them out into a half drop formation. Okay, so I've opened up my JPEG scan in Photoshop, and the first thing I'm going to do is just check that this is scanned at the resolution that I'd intended. So image and image size, and yep, it's 300 dpi and those dimensions seem good. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to want to do is give this a bit of a basic cleanup. So I always like to make a duplicate of my original layer, and I just kind of lock that and hide it and just use it as a kind of backup in case I make changes to this that I'm not happy with. Before we start this process, we need to make sure that our rulers are on, and that we need to make sure that smart guides are checked and also snap is checked. Okay, so what I need to do is crop away the excess that the scan bed has picked up, and I need to make sure that my artwork is straight. So I'm going to zoom in. You could either use the move tool, and ensuring that show transform controls are checked, you could rotate your artwork like this and do it by eye until it seems straight, or you can use the crop feature and this straighten button up here, which looks like a spirit level, to kind of click and drag against the line that you want to straighten. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and I'm going to confirm that. Now I'm going to crop this. Come up to image and image size, and what I'm going to do is check resample, and then this is one of the rare instances in which I'm going to change the width and height of this image, but I'm going to release that so that they are not constrained to the same original proportions. Now, it's going to make our lives a lot easier if this measures exactly 20 by 28, which is our repeat unit. So I'm going to go ahead and write 20 by 28 centimeters in there. And this will stretch our artwork ever so slightly. We won't be able to see it with the eye, and it's going to make our lives so much more straightforward when we come to building our repeat. So I'm going to press OK. We've got this join running through the middle of our artwork here, which we need to fix up. There's not enough time to cover exactly how every single tool works. This is the clone stamp. Looks a bit like a brush when you're using it, and it lets me clone pixels or kind of paint with pixels from somewhere else in the image. If I hit Option or Alt, I can define the pixels that I want to kind of paint with or clone. So click once, and now if I hover here, you can see I'm about to paint with those kind of white pixels. So if I click and drag, and as I do so, that little cross appears telling me where I am picking up the pixels from. Okay, now if I retarget, I can carry on, and we've kind of got a bit of a join issue here, which we can fix up in a second. And I continue to keep redefining where I'm picking up my pixels from. Okay. So I'm going to increase and decrease the size of my clone stamp using the square bracket keys on my keyboard to speed up this workflow. Now we're ready to manually build out our half drop formation. So I'm going to click and drag out from my ruler to create a guide that's going to snap to the edge of my image. And I'm going to do that around all 4 edges, and this is going to help us in a moment once we've built our layout. Now we need a bit of space to work with, so I'm going to come up to image and canvas size, and I'm going to drop this down to %, and I'm going to type in 400. in each field. It doesn't matter exactly if this is not 400%, as long as you've got plenty of space to work with. Now I'm going to anchor my artwork by pressing that little button there so that my artwork stays to the left and my canvas size increases around it to the right and top and bottom. If I hit OK and then zoom out, you'll see that I've now got a canvas which is 4 times as big. My artwork remains the same scale, so this is still 20 by 28 centimeters, and now I've got this space to work with. So similarly to how we worked on paper, I'm now going to create a duplicate of this. So right clicking my layer, create a duplicate, and I want to start building out my half drop layout. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. I can carefully pull this downwards and use these smart guides. Now that little grey box is telling me that I'm moving this exactly 28 centimeters down, so I can release. I can create another duplicate and do the same, but moving upwards. So exactly 28 centimeters upwards. Oops. So I'd have to do that again. Okay. And I can start to build out my repeat in this way. Now I can duplicate all 3 layers at once now. Okay. And I could now move this 20 centimeters that way, but I also need to move it 14 centimeters down because this is a half drop. So it's quite tricky sometimes to do this accurately. Okay, so in this way you could build up your repeat. And I'm going to show you another method in a minute that is 100% accurate every time. Okay, so this is one method of kind of building out your half drop repeat formation. Now I'm just going to delete these layers and bring it back to our very first layer to show a more accurate way of doing this. It's a little bit more time consuming. So I can make a duplicate. And now this time, if I come up to Edit, Free Transform, or Command T, which I'm going to use from now on, I then get these transform options up here. And if I click this little button here, I can now move this layer a specific distance, and in this case we're going to go 28 centimeters because that's the drop of our repeat, and 0 centimeters or pixels on the x-axis. And by having this little button here checked, Photoshop is going to use the original position of our layer as a reference point from which we're going to make this movement of 28 centimeters. I'm going to hit OK. Now I know that's exactly moved 28 centimeters. I can duplicate my original layer again, and I'm going to use Command T to get those options up. And this time I'm going to move it minus 28 centimeters to move that layer upwards. I'm going to commit. So now I can select all 3 layers and duplicate them. So right click, duplicate layers. And now I'm going to press Command T. And I'm going to transform all 3. So I need to move them 20 centimeters across to the right. And also, because this is a half drop, I now need to move them 14 centimeters down, because that's half the distance of our full drop. And I can do the same for another 3 layers. So select my 3 original layers and duplicate. And then again, Command T, and this time I just need to move those layers twice the width of my repeat unit. So that's going to be 40 centimeters towards the right, and I'm going to commit to that. So it's a good time to save this as a Photoshop file. And now I'm going to merge all my layers together. So select them all and right click, merge layers, or Command E. And now that they're all flat, I'm going to save this as something else. So I've still got my original layered document, and then I'm just going to put a letter B and save that. And now if we make a mistake here, we've still got our lovely layered document that we can refer back to. So now this is a point where we want to extract a new repeat unit to make seamless. So we can see that there are these little joins that need to be kind of perfected in order for this to be a true seamless repeat. So I can extract a new repeat unit by using the rectangular marquee. Under where it says style, I can drop down and choose fixed size. You could type in the dimensions of your repeat, so 20 by 28 centimeters. So our guides are going to come in handy again now. So if I click once with my mouse, I'm going to generate a rectangular selection of 20 by 28 centimeters. And if I click around here in relation to where my guides are, then I know I'm going to encompass all my seams in such a way that's going to make our lives easier to fix them up. So I can sort of reposition this slightly by just dragging it around. And so that we can see a bit better, if I come up to view and then scroll down to guides and clear guides, they're not kind of getting in the way now. So I can kind of see easily I've got this central vertical seam kind of running down the middle of my selection, and then I've got these two seams coming off to the left and right. So all of these need fixing up. Okay, so if you can kind of make a selection that encompasses all your seams in these kind of positions, we're going to be able to fix them quite easily. So flick to the crop tool, hit enter twice, and now we've cropped our image to the new repeat unit, which needs fixing up. I'm just going to delete this layer here. The type of artwork you're working with will determine which tools and features you use to clean this up, and you need to pick the most appropriate methods for your artwork. To get rid of my seams, I'm going to use a combination of the clone stamp and a few other methods. So magic wand to get rid of the white background, and I might choose to select this motif here with the lasso tool and delete it because it's got that line running through it, and switch it out for another motif which is complete. So using the lasso to choose another motif, and I can make a layer via copy, and with my move tool I can shift it over to the gap and then place it here, and then use a combination of the eraser and the clone stamp to finish off the rest of that join. I'm going to speed through this now using a combination of techniques. And now I'm ready to increase my canvas and manually build that half drop layout again. So I'm just going to create those guides that snap to the edges of my layer, and image, canvas size, flick these to percentage, and we're going to go 400 again, and anchor artwork to the left and center. And now I'm going to manually build out my half drop repeat layout in the same way as I did before. Okay, I'm now going to just clear these guides so we can see what we're working with. Now you might not be able to see this on the video, but from a distance it looks like there are these tiny fine lines running through my artwork, which might make me think I haven't actually made it seamless. But when I zoom right in, those fine lines disappear, and it's something to be aware of as a repeat pattern designer, that sometimes when zoomed out when Photoshop renders the image on the screen, it can look like there are kind of seams and imperfections, but if you zoom right in and you can't see them, then you should be safe. Okay, so now I can see my artwork working in half drop repeat, and I could at this point just carry on building this layout by duplicating motifs until I've got the desired area filled, and then I could save this file as a JPEG or whatever and send it to any print bureau for printing. Or I could extract from this layout my block repeat. And to do that, I'm going to just merge all my layers together. So select them all and I press Command E in that case. And now this time, if I choose rectangle marquee, and where it says fixed size, if I now double the width of my half drop repeat unit, so 40 centimeters, the height can stay the same. If I now click once and generate this rectangular selection, I've now sort of highlighted the area which is the block repeat. So if I then crop this, so switching to crop tool, hitting C on my keyboard, pressing enter twice, I've now extracted the block repeat from which I could go to edit, define pattern, and then save this as a pattern swatch in my Photoshop patterns library. And now I could use this, for example, file new, let's create a big document, 200 by 200, and then I could create a pattern layer, choose the last swatch in this list from that drop down and hit OK. And now I've filled this area with my block swatch. So you can't use the patterns library with a half drop repeat unit in Photoshop. You have to use it with a block repeat. So now I can see my artwork in full repeat. And at this point, you may choose to come back into your repeat unit and tweak the layout by moving motifs or whatever, or changing colors so that this overall repeat is more balanced. Or you could save this now. I could flatten this new document and save it as a JPEG or a TIFF and send it to the print bureau for printing. I could also come back here and develop this design further, and I'm going to show you a few variations of that quickly in a time lapse now. Here's a few examples of designs created with this method. Follow the link at the end of this video to watch part 2 of this tutorial.